Good morning to all. It is 10 o'clock straight up. I'd like to call to order the Ad Hoc Chief Internal Auditor Search Committee meeting. Ms. Palmer, will you please call roll?
Chair Ariscotta.
Here.
Regent Boylan. Regent Brager. Regent Carvalho.
Here.
Regent Cruz Crawford.
Here.
Regent Del Carlo.
Here.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Angela. For those able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. If Regent Carvalho, please lead the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before beginning, we take a moment to recognize that here in Nevada, we stand on the land of the Washo, the Numu, Northern Paiute, the Niuwe, Western Shoshone, and the Niuwu, Southern Paiute. We take a moment to recognize and honor their stewardship that continues into today. With this recognition, we state an intention to rightfully include their voice and respect them as the 27 sovereign tribal nations of Nevada. So we're going to go on to agenda item number 1, which is going to be the public comment. For those who would like to call in and offer public comment, please dial 669-444-9171 and enter meeting ID 928-4944-5069 and passcode 555555. I'll ask for public comment at the meeting sites first. Is there any public comment at GBC?
No public comment in Elko at this time.
Is there any public comment at the systems office in Las Vegas?
No public
There's not.
comment.
Thank you, and thank you. And there is not any public comment here in Reno at this moment. So we're going to move on to, I apologize. SCS, is there any public comment on the phone? Thank you very much. We're going to move over to agenda item number 2, which are our minutes from the previous meeting of July 26th. I'm going to go to the dice. Are there any corrections, comments, or is there a motion on the table?
Make a motion to approve.
I second it. Carol Del Carlo.
First motion by Regent Boylan, second by Regent Del Carlo. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? I too am in favor. Thank you very much. On agenda item number 3 is going to be my chair's report. So today I'm going to provide a brief overview of the process for interviewing candidates for the position of Chief Internal Auditor for the Nevada System of Higher Education. So we started with 12 total applicants from 7 advertised locations throughout the nation, and those advertisements were placed by Chief Human Resource Officer Eric Gilliland. During the week of September 9th, the aforementioned CHRO Gilliland and our Chief Financial Officer Chris Vuitton, they did the applicant screening for minimum qualifications. The following week of September 16th, a secondary screening and selection of finalists were done by CFO Chris Vuitton and UNLV Business Affairs Chief Compliant Officer Joe Sunbury and myself. On September 23rd, the Nevada System of Higher Education Human Resources Department notified candidates selected for the interview with the committee. Today, October 11th, the Chief Internal Auditor Search Committee will interview candidates and may recommend a final candidate for consideration to the full board. Lastly, 1 week from today, a special meeting will be heard in which the Board of Regents may appoint a chief internal auditor. So, an overview of interview process for today. With our candidates, each candidate will have 60 minutes per candidate to interview throughout this process. Following the last interview, we'll take a 15-minute break for everyone to pick up lunch. Prior to each candidate, Human Resources will provide a brief summary of references and feedback to benefit the entire committee. And also, what I'm going to ask is, prior to the human resource summary, there's going to be a list of questions that are going to be disseminated in which we have written up and we have formulated. And these questions were written by CFO Vuitton, UNLV Business Affairs Chief Compliance Officer Joe Sunbury, who is also the former Chief Internal Auditor for the Nevada System of Higher Education, and myself. These questions will be asked chronologically by the same regent to ensure equity and fairness from all candidates. Lastly, each candidate has agreed to utilize their internal integrity to assure that every candidate in this interview are going to have a fair and level playing field. And it's imperative that these candidates continue to abide by their strong ethics in which it is necessary to have as a chief internal auditor. So, Chief of Staff Nicole Lajewski and Mr. Gilliland, if we can bring up candidate number 1, which Lauren Tripp, and Mr. Gilliland, if you can give some information and for those questions to be handed out, please. Thank you much.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, committee members. For the record, Eric Gilliland, Chief Human Resources Officer. So as the Chair mentioned, we conducted reference checks on all 3 of the candidates and put together brief summaries for the committee. So for Lauren Tripp, we were able to contact 3 of Mrs. Tripp's references. These references have known and worked with Lauren in a professional capacity for between 5 and 16 years. Each of the references commented on Lauren's high level of intelligence and her ability to manage the complexities that come with the internal auditor function. They believe Lauren is a good listener. She provides valuable feedback. She is approachable. She is hardworking and she is capable. Lastly, Lauren, or the references noted that Lauren is deeply committed to NSHE and to doing the right thing for her team and the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gilliland. And as I await the candidate, excellent. Ms. Tripp, are you at the podium?
Mr. Chair, Holly Herrera is going to get Lauren right now.
Excellent. Thank you very much. During this moment, it gives all of us a little bit of time to review some of the questions that are going to be provided and asked by each regent on the search committee. All of these focus on the competency framework necessary as a chief internal auditor. Mr. Vuitton and Mr. Sunbury, who I greatly respect and have great history and knowledge in regards to this position, identified that the professionalism, performance, environment, leadership, and communication are essential competencies recommended by or required to fully succeed in this position. So as we await Ms. Tripp to walk to the podium, we'd appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Boylan.
Who made these questions? Who wrote these questions for us?
Our former Chief Internal Auditor, Joe Sunbury, and our current CFO, Chris Vuitton.
Thank you, sir.
There she is. Ms. Tripp, thank you so much and welcome to the podium, and thank you so much for your application for this position. We highly appreciate the entire process and your patience throughout. So as you see on the clock, you have 60 minutes later in front of you, and we have about 6 questions that we definitely want to ask. And time permitting, we're going to touch upon the final 2. But most importantly, Ms. Tripp, tell us about yourself and why you're interested in this position.
Sorry, I was waiting for the green light. So first, I just want to say thank you so much. I'm truly honored to be selected as one of the finalists here today. So I just wanted to start with that. So thank you, Chair Escada, Regents. Thank you. So the question was a little bit about myself and why I want the position. Okay, thank you. So as you know, I'm Lauren Tripp. I'm from California, but now I've lived in Nevada for over half of my life. I graduated from UNLV with my bachelor's in accounting and went back later to receive my master's in accounting. Prior to this job, I worked for the Gaming Control Board for 5 years as an auditor and a senior auditor. Then I have now been here for a little over 12 years now. I was hired in as a senior internal auditor, was promoted to internal audit manager, and now I'm serving the board as the interim chief internal auditor. I've been on a range of projects, anything from fees audits to childcare audits. As you know, higher ed has a lot of audited areas that we could audit. There are two projects I'm especially proud of that are a little bit unique that I've been involved in. One of them is providing direct assistance to the external auditors for the student financial aid audit. That is where I am embedded with the external audit team, and I perform testing with them, and we receive a discount on our bill by me doing that. Also, it's a benefit too because I've learned a lot over the years. I've done verification, R2T4, just a bunch of different sections during that, so it's something that I can bring back to the team to build that knowledge. The other project that I am especially proud of completing would be when I was the interim controller out at Nevada State. It was Nevada State College at the time, now university. And there were some very time-sensitive projects while I was out there, and I was out there during a transition period till they hired their permanent controller. So I was involved in the bank transition and then submitting iPads. So those two projects are more when I was in the internal audit manager role. And so as the interim chief internal auditor role, this is more of a position where I'm here to help the board and their oversight role. So this involves more of performing a risk assessment, and that helps drive the audit plan to be presented to the Audit Compliance and Title IX Committee for approval, making sure the department is in compliance with IIA standards, creating other reports for presentation at the board, and also, the incident management system. So I refer to this often as the hotline. And being the clearinghouse for that, where the reports come on, we triage them, we determine who the subject matter expert is, we work with that subject matter expert to close those out, communicate with the complainant, so being a part of that process as well. And I feel like I'm missing the end part of your question. I'm sorry. That was a little bit about myself. Can you just say the end one more time? I'm sorry.
Why are you interested in this position?
Oh, okay. Yeah, hello. So I'm interested in this position because, I'm a UNLV graduate. I care about the system. I love helping people. I've built some great communications or great relationships with individuals over the years. They feel comfortable coming to me as that trusted advisor to discuss their concern. I also, I am very committed to being the best that I can be. So since being here, I've obtained my CPA and my CIA, and I also I just signed up for a business analytics science certification. So I feel like this will be really helpful because we don't have that data analytics in our department right now. So this will be really helpful for me to learn that and bring it back so that we can utilize that within our department, because I feel like we can work smarter, not harder with some of our testing. I just really am interested to see the future of NSHE, and I'm just very committed to being the best that I can be.
Thank you for that background. Greatly appreciated. So what we'll do now, Ms. Tripp, is we're going to go ahead and start that 60-minute clock right now. And we're going to, leading off the questions will be Regent Breger. Please, Regent Breger.
Thank you so much. Susan Breger for the record. Nice to see you here today, and thank you for your sharing what you've done and who you are. So this first question is, as a chief audit executive, effective communication is paramount. How do you communicate audit findings and recommendations to different audiences, including non-technical stakeholders, to ensure understanding and facilitate positive changes? And I'm happy to repeat that if you need it.
I made the mistake of turning it off, sorry.
That's okay.
You might need to repeat it, but I think I've got the gist of it. But so basically, how do I communicate audit findings? And then sometimes individuals might not particularly, it might be too technical, so how?
And to any audience.
Okay.
So someone that might not have the experience that you have. And I am happy to repeat it again.
Okay, so I will try my best to answer it, and then I might have you repeat it. So I am very used to auditing individuals who, I feel like it's a trend where I usually have new, maybe all staff left and they're new and working through issues with them. So actually, can you repeat it one more time? I'm sorry.
It's a lot. As a chief audit executive, I'll just do part of it and then we'll go to the other part. Effective communication is paramount. How do you communicate audit findings and recommendations to different audiences? And it would be also non-technical stakeholders to ensure their understanding and facilitate positive changes. I don't know why we don't give her the question
Okay, so
today.
first of all, I want, like during my audits when I have audit findings, so what I do is I make sure that these are brought up at the time that they're coming up. So it's not, there's no surprise, I gotcha at the end of it. It's, here's the issue. I also am very straightforward with the issue because you don't want them guessing on, it's just better to be clear on what the audit issue is so that they can fix it. No beating around the bush to say. Also, I do a lot of preparation for the exit meetings before it gets to that final exit meeting. So I'll have pre-exits and making sure everybody's on the same page. Because like I said, nobody wants to be surprised, and I want them to be comfortable with that final report going to the board, and they need to be able to speak on those findings if they do get asked questions for different audiences and non-technical. So I do feel like I do a pretty good job about, like I said, I do have a lot of newer individuals I feel like that I audit. So being able to dumb it down is the wrong word, but just make it more digestible so that it's easier to understand. Here's the bigger issue. I don't like getting too technical because then people get lost in that. What is the issue? Like, what do we need to fix here? What is broken? So
and then including non-technical stakeholders to ensure understanding and facilitate positive changes.
Non-technical stakeholders. So I feel like, I'm kind of going to lean on the audit report. The audit report being our opinion on if that area is, we performed an audit and that is our opinion on it, and it should provide transparency on how that operation is operating, right? So that audit report should be, you don't get to see the work papers that are leading up to that final audit report. The audit report should be standing alone and should be able to, for just somebody who's reading it in passing, they should be able to understand what's going on and if it's a big issue or not. So I feel like that might tie into the non-technical, is making sure that those findings that are in that audit report are clearly communicated so that anybody can understand it, and it's not something that only people who are in audit or whatever in that specific field can understand it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Regent Breger. If we can move on to the second question presented by Regent Boylan.
Thank you, Chair. I had a real good question of my own, but for once in my life, I'm going to stick with regulation, kind of. And I'm going to ask you the question that's here. What role do you believe technology should play in enhancing the audit function? And then I'll ask you the second half after you answer that one. It makes it easier, right?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I feel like technology is going to come more and more into play here. So every week, I feel like I'm getting an email about being AI and needing to embrace it, but also be smart about it. So it's almost a double-edged sword. So, we can use it for maybe, say, an audit report. It's, 20 pages long, and you can generate via AI, like, hey, give me a summary in like 300 words, right? So that would be helpful, and using it to enhance what we're doing in the department. Now, where we got to be careful is obviously you need to be smart about it. So don't be taking like all of the financial aid data from PeopleSoft and dumping it in there and be like, hey, tell me which students are blah, right? Because now that's out there and it's using it for its analysis, and that's all sensitive information. So I feel like AI is going to become a big part of it. I already kind of mentioned data analytics, that we in the department tried to launch it a while ago, but then kind of fizzled out. So now that's also why I signed up for that course, to be able to understand it myself. I feel like when you are a leader within the department, you should have a pretty good understanding of what, if you're going to implement data analytics in your sample testing, or it's just a smarter way to test. I can't be like, I have no idea what this is, but good luck, you guys, So I feel like that's going to be a part of it. We already use an audit software program called Pintana, and that's where we house like all of our audits. And cybersecurity, that's a big thing going on too. Is I see that for all the emails for internal audit, and communicating with the IT groups to better protect yourself against that.
That's great, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned AI and cybersecurity. My second part of the question, please provide an example of how you have utilized technology within your audit approach. You kind of answered it already, but...
Yeah, I kind of have, huh?
Go ahead.
Cool.
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so
Thank you.
So I'll go through some of the software programs that I do use. So we kind of, as auditors, live in Excel. So that's what we're using currently, but there is, like I mentioned, better software out there to do cooler, I guess, sample testing and just better testing, because you can test, with some of these programs, you can test an entire population and be able to pick the outliers a lot better than just, hey, random sample number 5, I think I mentioned Pintana is our audit software program that we use, where we house all of the work papers. Some other technology, we use Workday, obviously, to pull down our testing to dump into Excel.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Regent Boylan. And if we're going to transition over to Regent Cruz Crawford, please, with question number 3.
Regent Cruz Crawford for the record. When dealing with organizational challenges or changes, it's important that internal audit remain agile and responsive to emerging risks and priorities. Please provide an example of your experiences when responding to challenges or changes.
Okay. So remaining agile. So that is very important for us. Sorry, can you read it one more time? I'm sorry.
Absolutely. When dealing with organizational challenges or changes, it's important that the internal audit remain agile and responsive to emerging risks and priorities. Please provide an example of your experiences when responding to challenges or changes.
Trying to think of an example. I mean, Challenges or changes. So I feel like some challenges and changes that I encounter within our audits, I would say, is that I'm seeing a lot of lately is some, like, hiring is a challenge. Hiring the right talent has been a challenge, and also succession planning. So, for instance, we've been on some audits where there's been some turnover, and, you know, it's either the person was there 40 years and they retired, or they left suddenly, and the people there are kind of struggling to know what that historical knowledge is. So that creates a risk for operations because they don't necessarily, you know, they're trying, it's just they don't have that historical background. So I feel like sometimes that can be a challenge, and being able to be accommodating to what they're experiencing out there. Not every audit is going to be the same. So I feel like there has been audits in the past where this has come into play, where it's like, hey, you know what, they would really benefit if it's almost shifting gears. So instead of just finishing the audit and like, hey, all these things are wrong, but good luck, it's like, okay, how about, here are all the issues, how about we come back and let's, you know, here's some things that you can do to fix these issues, and then we'll reassess to see, you know, did you fix these or do they still need some work? So I can think of a couple times that has happened. I feel like things sometimes just come up and then we need to handle it. So there's been some cases, I've worked on an investigation, I won't go into too much detail, but that there was an issue with some fraud involved. So I was working on a project, but it's like, hey, you know, we need to look at this right now. So then you shift gears, that project's now frontline, and you work on that to, you know, it's an urgent issue basically. So I'm very familiar with having to switch gears and reprioritize to something urgent that comes up. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Cruz Crawford. We're going to move on to question number 4, presented by Regent Carvalho.
Thank you. Good morning. Collaboration with other departments is essential. Can you provide an example of strategies you have used to ensure effective collaboration between internal audit and other assurance-providing functions, such as risk management, legal, and finance?
Okay, this one, I'm very familiar with this one. So I feel like those groups that you just mentioned, I feel like I have to collaborate a lot with them, especially for the hotline. Because when those items come in, I have to triage them, determine where they're going. So sometimes they're going to legal. So that's one avenue where I'm having to collaborate to resolve a concern that's coming in. Also, risk management. So I feel like we're being more and more involved with working with them. So recently, I'm not going to steal their thunder because they have big stuff going on that they should talk about themselves, but basically, they're working on a big ERM project right now that they've identified risk areas. They've assessed them. We're part of that process, certain constituents on identifying those risks and how likely they are to happen and the impact of how bad is this going to be if this really does go through. So they're still in the process of formalizing those, and I feel like that's going to be really big on how that drives our audit plan as well, because those are the enterprise risks as NSHE as a whole. So how can what's our part in this in helping mitigate some of those big picture risks? What can we do on our end to help those risks? For legal is a lot of the incident management system, I feel like, or just general. Sometimes there's some policy questions, like what is the intent of the policy? So I have pretty good relationships with legal at this point that I never thought I would have, because I've had questions on, hey, this institution is interpreting this policy this way. I've always seen it this way. Like, can you help us so I can help them better understand the intent of that policy? And then finance, I communicate obviously and report to the CFO. He's also been very helpful in some just general questions that come up. And also with the business officers, I'm in a lot of different groups where it keeps me kind of in the know of the issues going on or what people are struggling with. I feel like the controllers group is a really good one that describes, hey, we're having problems implementing this. What are we going to do? Are you running into that issue too? So just being in the know with all of those groups. Could you read the question one more? I just want to make sure I hit on everything I needed to.
Sure. Collaboration with other departments is essential. Can you provide an example of strategies you have used to ensure effective collaboration between internal audit and other assurance-providing functions such as risk management, legal, and finance?
Okay, I think I might have missed just the first part about just other departments in general. And, nobody wants to be audited. And sometimes people are pretty resistant to us being there because they're just like, well, why are you here? And it's making sure that you get across hey, we're here to help. We are not the gotcha people. We are really, let's work together. I feel like once, like I said, I have a lot of newer individuals I seem to tend to audit. I don't know, it's just the luck of the draw. So once they get comfortable with, I'm not scary, I'm here to help you, then it's really beneficial to both parties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Carvalho. Let's go over to question number 5 with Regent Del Carlo.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Lauren.
Morning.
So how do you approach the development, training, and mentoring of an internal audit team? And then here's the rest of it. It says, can you discuss your approach to talent management within the internal audit team, including recruitment, retention, and succession planning? And you mentioned succession planning in your opening remarks.
Yeah. Okay. I probably will do the trend and have you repeat it again, but I will start with the top part. So, developing and training, mentoring internal audit teams. So I feel like it's very important to lead by example. You can't be instilling practices on a team, but you're not following what you're asking them to do. I mean, it's just not going to work. I also am a big proponent of learning and bringing it back. So too many times I've seen where, that person holds all the information. Nobody knows what to do when that person leaves because they didn't share it. I'm very much a, hey, can you show me how to do that so that I don't have to bug you for that, and then I can help somebody else learn this. So basically spreading the knowledge, basically. You know, I've also kind of already mentioned that I'm always trying to better myself, because if I can better myself, then I can bring more to the team in NSHE. So that I already mentioned that business analytics course that I'm signed up for. I think that's going to be really helpful to help drive that for the department. And mentoring internal audit. Oh, okay, so mentoring. So I've been involved in hiring employees and training employees. I did probably more training at the job before this one just because the team was bigger and you had more turnover. So we always had new people. I would have audit jobs with that, you know, at least 5 individuals on it. So I'm training for different sections on my audit. And, you know, I feel like it's very important to, I'm also the kind of person who, when somebody comes to me with a question, I don't just want to give them the answer that I think it should be. So it's somebody comes to me and I go, okay, well, what do you think? Because I legitimately want to know how they're approaching that and what they think about like the thought process and how they got to their conclusion. Now, I've also had to have, along with the good, there's also sometimes the not so good. So I've also had to have some difficult conversations where audit work papers might not be in conformance with where they should be for the department. So those are also, of course, more difficult conversations, but they're necessary because it's not going to do anybody any good if, and I've been guilty of this too, where you're like, I don't have time, the back and forth. I just need to fix it and move on, right? But that's not going to help them learn when you do that. Yes, you'll get it done faster, but then that issue might keep repeating and it's like, well, why didn't you address this with me the first time? So I feel like that's sort of how I approach mentoring individuals. Recruiting talent, and I forget the last part of the question. Regent Del Carlo, could you repeat that? Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Can you discuss your approach to talent management within the internal audit team, including recruitment, retention, and succession planning?
Okay. So I am, for succession planning, I would say I'm very candid with, I guess I'm just very candid in general, but I'm very open with the team, like, hey, this is what's going on, this is what I'm doing. And I just want them to know, because I don't want them to be in a situation where it's like, I have no idea what she was doing, like, good luck, you guys. Like, so that's important for me to, I think I kind of mentioned this in the first part of the question, but to be able to provide that knowledge to the rest of the team, what I'm doing. Recruitment, so we just, I don't know how much I should talk about that, but basically we are moving forward. You know, we hired an internal audit manager who's supposed to start in Reno. And then retention, we have some very long-standing auditors. We have auditors up north who have been here 17 to 20 plus years. So that's a long time and a lot of knowledge. So I do feel like we're okay on the retention part, but when I first started, we had probably twice as many auditors as we do now. So I do feel like recruitment is going to be important in the future, and hiring, not just hiring a body too, hiring the right talent. We need somebody who will help add value to our department. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Del Carlo. As we do have time remaining, I'm going to circle back with Regent Cruz Crawford on question number 6, please.
Question number 6. Describe your experience working on special audit projects or investigations. What is your role in the process, and what were the outcomes?
Okay, so I have been on special audit projects, so I like this one. So those are the two that I can think of right off the top of my head were the ones that I mentioned when I was telling you a little bit about myself. One of them is the assistance for the student financial aid audit for the external auditors. So that one is, I really like that one because I've been able to develop this robust financial aid knowledge that I wouldn't have otherwise. Being embedded in their team, learning from them, that has been just such a great experience. Of course, bonus that we get a discount off of our bill, but I'm especially proud of that one and also being able to build those relationships with those financial aid directors over the years. They see me as an ally. The other project would be the interim controller assignment for Nevada State, now Nevada State University. So that one was very unique in the fact that I was assigned as their interim controller for a period of time. I led their accounting team out there. As auditors, I feel like sometimes we're lucky because in the fact that we get to see the final product. So it's easy to kind of critique like, well, yeah, you didn't do this right. But it's a whole other world when you're on that other side trying to create that project. It's just very different. And I that's another one where I've learned things about Workday that I never knew were possible. And it's just that project also helped save them a significant amount of money until they could get somebody in place. So I guess for those, I was directly involved for those two. I've also been involved in, kind of also mentioned this too, some investigations. And I was involved in, I've been in a few that I've been involved again, and then one that I oversaw the person who was doing the actual investigating. So I've been in ones where, because of my knowledge in financial aid, I was asked to help assist and determine what happened. It was kind of a collaboration / investigation. So the person did their own due diligence on what they thought it would be, and then I came behind them and verified basically and corrected a couple things. I'm like, well, they also had this amount here too that's involved. So that was a direct involvement one. And then that resulted in a report to try to improve a certain process, because the reason that happened was because of a broken process that they didn't find out until later after this happened. And then the one that I oversaw was related to somebody had a concern. I did some initial review and like, oh, I think we do have an issue here. And then somebody from the team ended up, we kind of worked together on what steps they should do to ensure that, yeah, what we're seeing is not so great. Here's this. This is our recommendation. We think that you should review this and determine like an amount, but this is what we have for this 1 month, and this is how we went about it. So that was kind of working with a team member on determining what should we do, like what's the best approach to go about verifying if this is really a problem or not.
Thank you, Ms. Tripp. And as I said, we had time permitting, so Regent Boylan, if you can take question number 7.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
What key performance indicators would you use to measure the effectiveness of the internal audit function?
KPIs. Okay, so I feel like, so I think we need to do a better job about, so one of the things I would like to do in the future that I think will be helpful to know is, and it's kind of tying into the IA standards and it will cover this, we don't currently do surveys on the individuals that we audit. So I feel like that would be a good indicator, like, did we hit the mark or were we way off and you thought this was a waste of your time? So I think that's important to know how we're doing with who we're auditing. Also, there's some other things we could do. I feel like sometimes our audits go a bit over budget. So bringing that back on tracking so that it can be more efficient and effective to get them a better turnaround time. I mean, some other things. Those are the two that come to mind right off the bat, but trying to think of some others. I mean, we've used some other things in the past, such as how many individuals in our department have certifications, or what we also do is we make sure that individuals in the department each year, they're getting training so that applicable training, right? So not just any kind of training, but training related to the job so that they're able to do their job. So making sure that we're doing that.
You said KPIs in the beginning, and you're doing great. Go ahead. The KPIs, yeah. Even I know that
Also,
acronym.
yeah, because I was like, okay. Just, that I feel like just for individuals in the department, making sure that we are reviewing, that we're producing quality work, reviews are being done, just all the things that we need to be doing to be in compliance with the standards.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
you,
you.
Chair.
Thank you, Regent Boylan. And I'm going to ask the last two questions. Number 8, how would you ensure recommendations are effectively communicated and implemented, leading to positive changes within the organization?
Okay. So we kind of do that now with our the 6-month exception report that comes to the Audit, Compliance, and Title IX Committee biannually, where we are following up on open exceptions. There's some closed exceptions and there's ones that are open. So those open ones, we follow up with management. And in order to I guess I should back it up a little bit. So when we're doing these audit reports with the findings and recommendations, you want to have buy-in from that point. Like you don't want, I don't want a report coming to the board that they don't agree with, because then they're not going to, make those changes or recommendations because they don't believe in it. So it's making sure from the get-go for that finding and recommendation that that they're on board, that they agree with it, that it's going to help them in some way for their process. So just making sure the communication is very upfront in the beginning, making sure everybody's in agreement. So then when it's hitting that exception report that I just kind of mentioned, that 6-month exception report and those follow-ups, that's kind of a report to show that they are in agreement with those findings, because you'll see on there a lot of times that, they're working through trying to change it sometimes. So maybe it's like a policy change that takes a while, but it's like, hey, we're working on it and it should be done during this time. So I also feel like that report is reflective of their willingness for the find, because that report used to have a lot more findings on it, and now it's pretty narrowed down to only a few. So that I feel like is a good indicator of the buy-in from management, because they are fixing those findings. And that report it's going slowly down some more, but right now it has gone down significantly over the years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very thorough. Ms. Tripp, you just rifled through 8 questions, and I say it with great admiration. You did it far under the time. What I'd just like to reach out and just say thank you very much for this opportunity, for providing us the opportunity for you to interview for this position. We greatly appreciate it. As we close this for our first candidate, which is you, I just want to give notification that Human Resources will remain in contact with you in regards to the next few steps in which we're going to be taking. But thank you very much, Ms. Tripp. Greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you so much. Like I said, I really appreciate being a finalist here today. Like, I know I've sounded probably pretty nervous, so I'm sorry, but it's just, I really just care about NSHE. I really, thank you, just thank you. Thank you. I've been so honored to serve the board for the past year, so thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tripp. Excellent. As we await our next candidate, Ms. Kimberly Hawk, to come up to the desk in order for the same interview questions in the same chronological order. We're going to go ahead and talk to or listen to our Chief Human Resource Officer, Eric Gilliland. Please go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me? All right, just making sure it's on. Again, Eric Gillen for the record. So the next candidate up, as Chair indicated, is Kimberly Hawk. So for Kimberly, we were able to connect with 4 of her references. All 4 references have known and worked with Kimberly in a professional capacity for 8 to 20 years. Each commented on Kimberly's knowledge of internal audit principles and her excellent attention to detail. They believe Kimberly is a great communicator. She is fair and honest. She is talented. She is a talented team builder. She's driven, and she is an optimistic person. Lastly, Ms. Hawk is a passionate auditor, and it is something that she is very good at.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilliland. And Ms. Hawk, are you at the podium or at the desk?
Hi, Chair Ariskata. This is Winter Lipson. Chief of Staff Carrie Nikolajewski is getting Ms. Hawk right now.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have a quick question. Chair Ariskata, this is Regent Cruz Crawford.
Please go right ahead.
I didn't get the rubric. I just got the question, so I've been feverishly writing. Can you send over the rubric for the interview? Carrie?
Yes. Let's do this, if we could, please, Regent Cruz Crawford. Let's continue to take our own notes in regards to the rating or the response to the questions. And at the conclusion, I know that Chief Human Resource Officer, Mr. Gilliland, is going to have a comment. So at that time, we can share those at that time.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So it's right.
And there she is. Ms. Hawk, welcome to the state of Nevada, and thank you very much for your interest with this entire process and your interest as Chief Internal Auditor for the Nevada system of higher education. Ms. Hawk, as you sit at the podium today, I'm going to throw you a quick question right off the bat, is to please tell us about yourself and why you're interested in this position.
First of all, I'd like to thank the Board of Regents for considering my application. I look at it as a great honor to be even considered for this. And I hope today I can provide you with information about who I am and what I can bring to the table. In general, like I said, my name's Kim Hawk. I like Kim. If I use Kimberly, I know I was in trouble. Kimberly Ann, forget it, I ran. But I'm originally from Pittsburgh, so my blood runs black and gold. And so on Sunday, you know who I'm rooting for. I went to higher education there in the public school systems in Clarion University, which is now considered Penn West. I was not the best student in the world, and I'll be the first one to say that because you learn from those mistakes. And I went from being a biotech major to a business major. After college, I moved to the Washington, D.C. area, and I stayed there for 33 years until traffic got to be too much. And I moved back to Pittsburgh, and I've been Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and now I'm in Indiana. When I saw this position, what I thought was very interesting was I could take my internal audit experience, plus I also taught in the higher education system. I taught internal audit to both graduates and undergraduates. And I thought, wow, here's an opportunity for me to, I understand the higher education system a little bit better. I'm internal audit, which sometimes you wonder why you do the jobs that you do. Well, I have a passion for internal audit. I've taught it. I've been actively involved in the Institute of Internal Auditors. And I've been actively involved both on the international level and within the local chapter levels. So internal audit kind of found me, and I think I found my niche. And this was the first time I had an opportunity really to go outside of a comfort zone. And that comfort zone has been financial services my entire career. And when I saw this opportunity, I thought, I'd like to explore it and to see where it goes and to see how I can bring the best practices from financial services into a completely different industry.
Thank you, Ms. Hawk. I appreciate the background. Ms. Hawk, how we're going to go ahead through this questionnaire section is we're going to have 6 questions. They're going to be asked by each of the committee members. And if time allows, we're going to go with 2 more questions, 2 additional questions if time is available. We're going to start off right now with Regent Brager with question number 1.
Thank you for being here and good morning to you.
Good morning,
And I'm
ma'am.
happy to repeat the question if you need. As a chief audit executive, effective communication is paramount. How do you communicate audit findings and recommendations to different audiences, including non-technical stakeholders, to ensure understanding and facilitate positive changes?
So, Ms. Brager, what I consider is an open door policy to start out with. And what I mean by that is that the internal audit process from the start to the end should be very transparent. So when I'm doing an audit or my team is doing an audit, we can work with the auditee and discuss the scope of the audit, why we're doing what we're doing, and then they understand that when we have a finding, we bring it to them immediately. You don't wait until an exit conference. You don't wait until a report is issued. You bring it to them immediately. The reason being is twofold. One, if you read the standards, internal audit is not fallible. We're infallible. We make mistakes. So you want to talk to the people who are doing the work on a daily basis, who are ones that are responsible for the controls and the risks, and say, we found this. Did we make a mistake? Did we understand the processes? And therefore, we're able to determine if it's truly a finding, then everybody's agreeing upon it at the beginning or towards the end when the report is issued. Now, when you talk about it with individuals that are more in a strategic position, you want to be of I look at it as the 30-second rule. How do I talk to somebody and tell them what's going on in 30 seconds, knowing that their time is busy? So you get to the facts. I found this. We've worked with the line of business. This is what they're going to be doing, and you move forward. But I've always looked at internal audit as the second most knowledgeable group in an organization. And the reason I say that is because the people that are doing the work on a daily basis, they're the most knowledgeable, but we become the second most knowledgeable. So therefore, we talk to them with respect because they're the ones that are doing it on a day-to-day basis. You know, we come in, depending on the risk, depending how it's been risk assessed, 1, 2, 3, 4 years. We don't see them all the time. They're the ones that are in the trenches on a daily basis. So by respecting them about the work that they do and about their knowledge, you actually open up the lines of communication and they're more willing to give you information. So I look at communication as respect, and I also look at communication as listening. Listen to what they have to say. Don't jump to conclusions. Listen, open lines of communication, and talk.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Regent Berger. We're going to transition over to Regent Boylan, please, number 2.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome to Nevada, not Nevada, don't say that, but yeah, welcome. My question is two-part, and let's take 2 questions, actually. I'll ask you the first one, and then the next one, so you don't get confused. What role do you believe technology should play in enhancing the audit function?
In today's world with big data, I think technology is crucial for us to be able to be as efficient and as effective as possible. Engagements such as continuous auditing become very valuable to the organization. Looking at the data, looking for red flags, looking for anomalies. When you do your normal statistical sampling or your normal sampling, sometimes when you find something, it's like the needle in the haystack. But technology, AI, allows us to look for those anomalies ahead of time and provide our line of business partners with real-time data so they can correct it as quickly as possible. So to me, data analytics, AI, et cetera, are crucial to the success of an internal audit department. And in addition, it's crucial to the success of the organization, meaning the higher education system. The reason being is when you have that real-time data, you're able to look at large data the way you can look for efficiencies and you can look for cost savings. And if you think about it, we're working with the taxpayers' money, we're working with grants, and by able to do those using technology, continuous auditing, analytics, we can actually find ways where things are more efficient and therefore provide cost savings to an organization.
I like that. Cost savings is great. Okay. The second part, please provide an example of how you have utilized technology with your audit approach.
Currently on my staff, I have an information technology auditor. His role is twofold. One is to look at the IT controls, but also to build technology or data analytics into our audits. The reason we do that is because it allows us to tailor the testing that we do, looking truly what the high risks are. It also allows us to plan more efficiently. And third, what it does is it allows the team to be able to have a better understanding of the data from the time it enters into the system until it goes out. So we use technology, especially in our audits, to ensure that the core data is accurate.
Thank you, Ms. Hawk.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. I keep trying to get this technology to work here. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I've decided not to turn it off and on. I'll just back away a little bit, so that way I don't have to be wondering, did I do it right or not? So.
Thank you. Thank you both. We're going to move over to question number 3, presented by Regent Cruz Crawford.
Regent Cruz Crawford for the record. Don't give him any ideas about not turning off his microphone. Question number 3. When dealing with organizational challenges or changes, it's important that the internal audit remain agile and responsive to emerging risks and priorities. Please provide an example of your experiences when responding to challenges or changes.
Thank you, ma'am. Currently, my organization is going through a lot of changes. So what I'm going to say to you is public knowledge. I'm not saying anything that's confidential, but the bank I currently work for is under what's called a consent order. A consent order is when the regulators, meaning the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and I'm in financial services, says that your bank is not safe or sound. So they give you these what we call articles, and you have to fix those articles. Well, you're fixing them. Internal audit is looking at them. We're testing them. We have to send the testing to the regulators. If the regulators don't like it or they change their minds, it's a constantly evolving process. So you have to be agile to change that. You have to also be on your toes with that because the regulators, they're very important to the safety and soundness of the financial institutions. So therefore, when the regulators say, no, this isn't going to work, you need to be part of that process. We may not be the ones making the decisions, but we're the ones that say, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? So you have to be on your toes, understanding the processes, willing to work with everybody, and be there as an advocate for both the organization plus internal audit, because we're the ones that are going to be doing the testing eventually. So that is probably one of the most stress situations you can ever be in. Some that aren't as stressful is when you have a change in management. Somebody leaves an organization and they bring in a new ideas. My role has always been is to have one-on-ones with these key individuals. So we know what's going on. We can react to it if there's a change in a policy, a change in a process, a new initiative, a new product. We can be there and talk about it with them, understand where they're coming from, and determine, is this going to be a risk to the organization? Therefore, we need to include it in our audit plan and have the audit committee, which is in banking what we are, an audit committee approve it, or can we document it appropriately and determine if that needs to be on the audit plan for next year? So again, that's another way to be very agile and active. Is one of the questions you asked was communication, is making sure you stay in touch with the key players within the organization and understanding what their risks are, what's keeping them up at night, and asking the question, what would you like us to do for you? Because we're not just internal audit, we act in an advisory role, we act as an assurance function, where we can be there and provide guidance to the organization with regards to risks. I'd like to expand on that a little bit more, if you don't mind, Regent Crawford. The Institute of Internal Auditors has this wonderful picture of what internal audit can do, what they can do with certain assurances, and what they can't do. That middle part of it is what I consider that gray area, where we can bring value to the organization, but we've got to make sure that we're maintaining our independence. So in that point, that's where we can bring value, and we can also be active in making changes in the event that an initiative, product, policy, procedure is changing, and it can have a direct impact on the risk profile of that area. You're welcome.
Thank you both. We're going to go to question number 4, presented by Regent Carvalho.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Collaboration with other departments is essential. Can you provide an example of strategies you have used to ensure effective collaboration between internal audit and other assurance providing functions, such as risk management, legal, and finance?
One of the things I did want to discuss as I was looking through the audit reports, the risk plan, some of the audit documentation that was out there, was risk management. While risk management may be considered the second line of defense, and we're the third line of defense, and we're the independent assurance function, the risks really are identified in that second line of defense within risk management. And we can use that to do our independent risk assessments, but they're the ones that are really responsible for identifying the risks, identifying the controls. And that piece of information is vital to ensure that we've identified in our audit universe the appropriate risks and controls. Other assurance functions, especially in banking, what we call quality assurance or quality control functions, where they're in there and they're testing transactions, they're testing processes, is looking at their audit plan when we're doing our audit plan or their testing plan. Can we rely on their work? If we can rely on their work, then we want to rely on their work. And instead of going out and doing our own testing and our own sample, we can do targeted testing of what they've done and then do an independent sample to make sure that the results are equaling each other. So in that case, those types of relationships are very important to, again, build efficiencies and effectiveness into internal audit. Finance especially, and this was one of the things that we've been able to do in our organization. We are a privately held bank, so we do not have to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley. We comply with a law called FDICIA, which is the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation Internal Controls Act. And what it basically is FDICIA or it's Sarbanes-Oxley for non-public banks. But working with our finance group to determine what are the financial controls, mapping those to the processes, so when we are in there testing, we can look at what we need to test, but also too, working with risk management to put in what's called risk control self-assessments. And what I mean by that is that the line of businesses really are the ones that own the risks and they own the controls. They should be the ones that are testing those risks and controls. And then we can look at their work to see where there's been issues identified, where they've been the ones to be able to put in the remediation efforts. In the banking world, if you look at first, second, and third line of defense, first line is the lines of business. Second line is risk management, and third line is internal audit. So for instance, this is the perfect world, which nothing's the perfect world, but your first line of defense is doing their risk control self-assessments, and they find a problem. They can put the remediation in, they're the ones who understand it, but let's say they miss something. Then your second line of defense, your quality control function, your loan review function, whatever, can take a look at that and say, hey, you guys should have found this. And work with them because they're challenging them. They get that opportunity to challenge. The third is us, internal audit. And as I like to say, we're that final gatekeeper. You want to make sure you're catching things because heaven help you if the regulators find out. And that's where MRAs, consent orders, cease and desist orders come into play. So if we're looking at what's being done in the first and second line of defense, and we can rely on their testing, we can then again target our testing to be more efficient and more effective. So it's important to know who the people are, the players are, that are responsible for those lower level assurance functions within the lines of business, and asking for their audit plans, asking for their testing plans. Does it align to our risk assessment? Are they testing things that, we can make recommendations that maybe they should be testing things differently, or looking at their scripts, maybe they're not testing things as deeply as they could, especially in a regulatory environment. So that's where we come in, is we might be able to rely on their work, but we also can make recommendations to improve their work. And the more we can rely on their work, the more efficient our testing is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to transition over to question number 5, presented by Regent Del Carlo.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning.
So this is 2 questions. So here's the first one. How do you approach the development, training, and mentoring of an internal audit team?
I have to say that's one of my strengths, especially since I've taught in the university level, that, I want to see people succeed. What you first do is you have to do a gap analysis of the skills that your team has and what skills does your team need. And based on that gap analysis, then you can develop training plans to allow those individuals to improve their skills, whether it's online training, whether it's a course, a conference, et cetera, but encouraging that. In addition, I'm a certified internal auditor. I look very highly on that certification to show that I have a grasp of the internal audit concepts. Encouraging your staff to get certified, encouraging your staff to get their master's degrees in whatever discipline that they want, especially if they want to stay in internal audit. Being there to help them through it, give them the time they need to do the training, and build it into your budget, into your audit budget. When you build it into the audit budget, what you've basically done is you say, I want you to do this. This is important for you. Put the time aside out of your day, out of your year, with the amount of hours you have to do that training. Having one-on-ones is crucial with your staff. I have a very small staff. I have 10 people reporting to me, and I have one-on-ones with them each month. And I also have an open door policy. So during those one-on-ones, I encourage them that this is not my meeting, this is their meeting. What do you want to talk about? Is there an audit you want to do because you want to get outside your comfort zone? Is there some training you want to do because you did part of an audit and you got really interested in this? That's their time to talk to me about their career development. Now, yes, I have to talk to them about performance if needs be or how things are going, but I encourage them to tell me, where do they see themselves 1 year, 3 year, 5 years from now? And I want to make that happen for them. The reason being is because, one, human resources are very limited out there. Auditors, aren't going into the discipline as much because a lot of the schools are teaching CPA, and they don't understand the internal audit career track. So if I have somebody that's in internal audit and they've come to us, I want to make sure that they end up liking it. In addition, the greatest compliment I can get is when somebody from my team goes into an operational function. And the reason I say that is because of the fact that they understand how to write policies, procedures, risks, and controls. A lot of the line of business don't understand how to do that. And that's just part of the business. They're not trained to be policy writers or control writers, but we are. So taking that skill set and having somebody go into the line of business, to me, is one of the greatest accomplishments I can have. So I want my team to be learning. I want them to use their time. I want them to do continuing education. If they have a certification, they have no choice. I have to get 40 hours a year. So, if I have to do it, I encourage everybody else to do it. So, but I like to mentor them. Like I said, I have a passion for internal audit. And when I've taught, I've had students that say, I never thought this could be a career for me. They've always told me, you have to go into public accounting, you have to go into public accounting. And I'm like, no, you get so much more. And they say, well, where can I go with my career? You have people that can be chief internal auditors. They go in as controllers. They go in as risk officers. They can go in as CFOs. And I have had individuals who were in the lines of business who became chief audit executives, who then became chief executive officers of smaller companies, smaller banks, because they understand that risk and control process. And they can bring that knowledge to the organization. And that's risk governance is so important as part of the overall culture of an organization.
Thank you. And the rest of this question, or in addition, you've touched on a little bit, but can you discuss your approach to talent management within the internal audit team, including recruitment, retention, and succession planning?
We'll start with recruitment. That's one of the hardest things. I work with human resources, and what I basically say to them is, I want to see every resume. And my HR recruiters have said, why? And I say, because I may see something in that person that you may not see. You may give them a job description, you may tell them what you're looking for, but sometimes there's something in there that pops out to you. So I want to talk to that individual. So, there's obviously some people that you see their resumes and you go, you're just not qualified for this. But sometimes there's this little statement they make. And knowing what I'm looking for of a team, I'll give you an example. In my current position, we needed somebody that was a data analytics specialist. Well, the gentleman who's our IT auditor said, I've done this, but I really need somebody else to help me with this because it's not a one-person deal. I had a gentleman on my team has his undergrad in economics, and economics and data analytics are just like, perfect for each other. So when I approached him, I said, Jordan, that's his name, said, you've been doing regulatory compliance audits. How is your economics degree being used within my department? He goes, it's not. This is just what I've asked to do. I said, what if I can help you with using your economics degree to do data analytics? And his eyes lit up. And he had been looking for jobs, and I knew he was, but now all of a sudden he's like, I want to stay. Because now I've got this new thing that I can do, and especially with economics and data analytics, he can be looking at things that are in the industry that could be emerging risks for me based on data that we could be looking at either within our own data or within data that's being provided to us. So he's now excited about that. And he's learning, and he's taking his economics degree and his data analytics skills and bringing it to the team and working with my IT auditor. So that's probably one of the examples I can give. Another one is, like I said, with recruitment, retention. Making them feel like they're part of a team. Making them feel like that they are accountable and that they also have the ability to bring problems to you. I have a very open door policy, and I've said that once already, but I'll say it again. And the reason being is because I don't know all the answers. And if my team is doing the audits, they're the ones that are in there and they'll say, Kim, I have this problem. And I tell every one of my team members, bring me every problem you find, but bring me a solution. And at first they didn't understand why. And I said, the reason being is because I'm empowering you to be able to make decisions. Your solution may not be correct, and that's okay, because that's how we learn, is making mistakes. But you took the time to think it through instead of just saying, here, take this. So what you've done is you've empowered them to feel like they're part of the process and not just ticking and tying everything. And then, as I said, those one-on-ones are very important to the team because they can talk to you about where they want to go, or if they're unhappy, what I can do to make them, happier in the department or happier in their career. And, get them those tools that they need so they can stay. Because as I said, human resources, and it's all over, it's not just internal audit, it's within all organizations. Human resources are very limited. And if I have an auditor that's good, I want to make sure that they stay good and I give them what they need. If you asked my team, one of the things that I brought to them, it's that I've brought a sense of respect to them. Before I came along, they were not really well respected and had nothing to do with their skill sets. It just had to do with the situation we were in. By opening up to them, by making them feel like a family and making them feel like a team, and then allowing them to go out there and not just do these audits, but be an advocate by putting them on committees, by putting them into meetings that are such. They feel like they are being more respected. And with that respect comes the fact that we get information we may have never been able to get. And what I mean by that is now they don't feel like the auditors are here. Now they're like, hey, internal audit, come on in. We need you. And they hear things and they can say, we can help you. So that's where, and if they feel like they can do that and they're just not there to, dot the I's and cross the T's, they feel like they have a real value added to an organization. Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Huck.
Mm-hmm.
Because time is permitting, we're going to move over to question number 6, once again asked by Regent Cruz Crawford.
Sorry, I apologize. Describe your experience working on special audit projects or investigation. What was your role in the process and what were the outcomes?
Okay, I would like to answer this, but keep things as confidential as possible. A lot of times when you do an investigation, whether it's a fraud investigation or a potential for fraud, really what you want to do is you don't treat that any differently. And I have two answers to this one. If somebody suspects fraud and if you go in and you do a standard internal audit, your testing should be adequate to see if the control environment is operating effectively. And if the control environment may not be operating effectively, what that does is it opens the door for potential fraud. Now, a true fraud investigation, they always come to internal audit for those because they know we have the experience, whether we have a CFE on staff or we have just people who have that experience. But one of the things that I think is vital to that is including human resources, including legal counsel in those investigations, because your data and your information can become discoverable in any kind of legal case. So you want to make sure that you're following rules to ensure that attorney-client privilege, if you need to prosecute, does your data support it? Can you prosecute this individual in the event that they are committing some type of fraud or some type of criminal act? But using those resources, such as human resources, such as legal counsel, we can do the testing, but ensuring that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed are very important to ensure that the integrity of that investigation is maintained at all times. And also, too, is depending on the severity of it, is going out and hiring resources to help you with that, where they would be doing the investigation with guidance from internal audit, legal, and human resources, especially if it's a very delicate case, if it involves any kind of criminal act, any kind of, forgery, any kind of funds that have been misappropriated, et cetera. Sometimes getting that expert is important. If you go back to the IIA standards encourage the chief audit executive to get resources that they need when they don't have those resources. So about 5-10 minutes ago, I spoke about looking at a gap analysis. If we start to see, based on our continuous auditing, that fraud or certain situations occur, we may have to go out there and hire somebody with a CFE, a certified fraud examiner, just to look at those red flags that we find when we're doing continuous auditing. Or the other thing is, too, is I have a team member who says to me, that fraud stuff really excites me. I really think that's cool. How do I become a CFE? Well, why would I need to go out and hire someone when I have somebody who's interested in doing it and I can provide them the resources, the training, the books, et cetera, for them to get that experience? And so we have that person on staff. So again, it's, using your resources, providing working in conjunction with the governance functions, because a lot of times legal, human resources, et cetera, finance, where it might be some misappropriation of funds, working with those individuals. That's the only time, when I said at the beginning about transparency, that's the only time an audit isn't transparent, is when you're looking at fraud, because you don't want to tip that individual off or, tip that person off where they can go back and maybe make corrections to things. So they've actually hidden what they needed to do. So that's the one time where you want to be as discreet as possible.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both of y'all. We're going to go to question number 7 from Regent Boyland.
Thank you, Chair. And I took Regent Crawford's advice and left mine on, so I'm not messing around with. Again, welcome.
Thank you.
What key performance indicators would you use to measure the effectiveness of the internal audit function?
There are 3 phases to an internal audit. There's your planning phase, there's your fieldwork phase, and there's your reporting phase. When we plan the audit for the year, or the audits for the year, when are they starting? How long we're in the planning phase, how long the fieldwork phase, and how long we're reporting? Have we hit those milestones? So those are key performance indicators I would definitely be using. Also, too, is issues management. One of the things that I noticed, and I'm not criticizing the interim or anybody previously. I'm just giving, what I've saw from some of the reports. And one of the things that I noted is that when there was issues found, there was not a lot of information about who was responsible for it, when they would be remediating the issue by. And in addition is, when I didn't see this in the risk assessment and the audit plan, is what testing are we going to be doing to make sure that those issues have been remediated appropriately. Those are another key performance indicator, is how many issues did we test on time? How many issues have been returned back to the line of business? Those types of things. So that's other key performance indicators. Did we get the audit plan done on time? That is the biggest thing that internal audit needs to do, is if the Board of Regents and the audit committee says, okay, you're going to do 25 audits this year, and you're going to get them done by December 17th. I'm using a calendar year for this example. You better get your audit plan done by December 17th. And that's the biggest key performance indicator. Is the audits being done on time? Are we getting reports out the door on a timely basis? And are we providing information to the audit committee that is valuable to them? So that's all part of the annual audit plan as far as I'm concerned. And those, are we getting reports to you in a relatively quick manner? Is the information we provide to you something that you can use strategically? And then also too is the other one that takes more time is how many people in my department are certified? And what I mean by certification, it's either the CIA, CPA, or their MBAs. The MBA is just as important to me as the certification. How much of a percentage of your team has worked towards getting those certifications? And that's a KPI. And then you take a sub KPI of that is, are they getting the training they need on a timely basis? And do you have the resources to give them that training? So is somebody waiting till December 1st to get their training? Or do you have a training plan put in place that you're following and getting people the training they need within that time frame?
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate all those KPIs that you mentioned. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Regent Boylan. Final question. I'm going to go ahead and take this one. How would you ensure recommendations are effectively communicated and implemented, leading to positive changes within the organization?
May I ask you a question first, Mr. Arascata?
Please.
Do you all have automated work paper packages such as Teammate, Audit Board, et cetera?
That is something I am unsure about.
Okay, well, I'll pretend that you don't, okay? Automated work paper packages are very vital to the management of the internal audit function, and I'll give you reasons why. We use Audit Board, which is a total GRC, or Governance, Risk, and Compliance framework. And one of the modules in there is issues management. So the way it works is my team's doing an audit, they find an issue, it's going to be reportable, it's automated. You click a button, it identifies as an issue, it numbers it, it puts it into the module that is used for issues management. Then at the end of the audit, when everything's closed, those issues are pushed out to the people who own those, which is one of the reasons I said when I looked at the report, I wouldn't know who owns those. Well, when you use a system like that, there's accountability in there. And those individuals within the system have access to that GRC system when it comes to the issues. So when you have your report and they say that Kim Hawk is responsible for this and she is going to remediate this by December 31st, the automated work paper package then gives that report, pushes it out to them so they can do their testing as a workflow. So what happens is that you don't have to be monitoring it. You can just pull a report up on a monthly basis to see what issues are open, what issues are pending remediation, meaning that they've submitted to us and we have to do testing, what issues have been returned to the lines of business because it failed testing, and which ones are closed. So then what happens is I can keep track of that. And if I see something that's not being, worked on the way it should, then I can go out to the line of business and I can say to them, We notice you have an issue here. You had stated to us you would have it remediated by X date. We haven't seen anything. How's it going? Do you need extra time? Now, extra time can be very interesting. If somebody says, you know what, I just didn't have the time to do it, I'm sorry. First thing I'm going to say is, I'm sorry, I can't give you an extended time. But if somebody comes to me and says, we're putting a new process in, we're putting a new procedure in, and it's going to change our risk profile, I want to give them the time to do that because they've really thought through it. But then what happens is that when I have to report to the audit committee, all I have to do is pull a report up and it'll give me all the statistics associated with it. And the audit committee of the Board of Regents can say, we know what's going on. And in addition, if you find somebody who's past due, we can elevate it to their individual who they report to, and elevate it to, if it's at a university level, to the president, or if it's within the system, their direct report. Or if the audit committee feels serious about it, especially if it was a high-rated issue, then they would have to answer to the audit committee, because the audit committee then reports to the Board of Regents. And if I was the Board of Regents, I'd want to know why it's taking so long to close this. So the reporting is very important. And that's why an automated work paper package is so vital, because one, you can do your planning in there, you do your field work in there, your reporting comes out of it because you've already got your issues done, you already have a template. They actually make it much more efficient in the long run. And it tailors the testing to where we know we're looking based on risk control matrices, the appropriate risk and controls in the organization. In addition, in this, I'm using this as my example, they have something called SOX Hub, which is really the financial controls. So what I can do is I put all the financial controls and non-financial controls in there, and we map them to business processes. So then when we go to do testing, we just pull them right into our testing. And there's our audit plan and our audit phase. Are those systems cheap? The answer is no. But in the long run, they bring efficiency and effectiveness to the internal audit function. And what they allow you to do is bring reports that are more valuable. Like I said, I was looking over one of the reports. One of the things that lines of business like is, why did I make a mistake here? So you're looking at the basic 5 C's. What is the cause? What is the condition? What is the criteria? What is the root cause? I mean, you don't have to do any type of statistics to go why. And usually when you do the 5 whys, you've come down to the core of why there was a breakdown in the control environment. Then you allow them to tell you, how are you going to remediate it? We make a recommendation to how to remediate it, but again, they own that risk. They own those controls. We may make a recommendation, but they're the ones that have to fix it. We work with them to come up with a solution, especially if we've made a recommendation that may not work for them. And that's the other thing too, is internal audit really needs to be cognizant of the resources of the areas that they're auditing. It does us no good to come in and say, you need to put a $5 million system in, when a simple manual control that may take, 6 months to create does the same thing. It's a waste of resources. And I wouldn't be doing my job if I go out there and make these pie in the sky kind of recommendations. So again, that transparency comes in, and we can make those recommendations to be efficient. And then those issues that you were asking the question about, it's very easy for them to remediate those because they own them, because we've assigned them to them in the system. And a lot of times with just your typical Word and Excel spreadsheets, that's human controls. They get missed.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, we have completed all 8 questions for both candidates. And in closing, would you have a few comments you'd like to state?
I would like to. Thank you very much. Again, I'm an internal auditor. We go to documents and we look at documents. I was going through some of the documentation, and I may have some questions with regards to them. I guess the first one is the risk assessment that's performed. There was no heat map in there. And what I mean by that is that I didn't know really where the risk and control or risks were to the organization by looking at the risk assessment. And I understand, and I think it's great that the interim chief is doing it on a 6-month basis. That shows that she's being reactive to changes in the risk environment. But looking at this, and this is a public document, how would I know what the risks are to the organization? Because it just showed what the audits were, it showed what the outstanding issues were. My role is to provide you all with strategic information for you to be able to make decisions and make recommendations to the Board of Regents. I looked at it and I thought, I'm not sure that you're getting the right information to make those strategic decisions. Another thing I wasn't able to find was if the internal audit function had performed a gap analysis of the control, or not the controls, of the new IIA standards. And I know that there was a policy that she had written, but it had been tabled until whoever you hire to come into that one. But I think there was a step that maybe she had performed and I wasn't aware of, is did she do a SWOT analysis? Did she look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of the internal audit department? And was a strategic plan created for the internal audit department that aligned to the state higher education's strategic plan? That's one of the things that's very vital. And part of the planning we do for internal audits is we look at departmental's strategic plans to see if what they're doing aligns with where the direction of the organization goes. So I wasn't sure that I saw that, and she may have it, I just didn't see it. So I, was thinking that that was very important to do, is look at the strengths and weaknesses, look what our opportunities are, and come up with a strategic plan. So what I did was, at my last organization, we did the SWOT analysis, and then I came up with critical success factors would be done over a 3-year basis to bring the internal audit function up, including staffing. So, based on the audit plan is determining where staffing may be necessary and determining what you need to make that department value added to the organization. I saw there was there's 5 individuals, including her. I was surprised at how low the amount of audit hours are, and maybe that's because I didn't see any continuous auditing that was mentioned in the risk assessment. That continuous auditing really, to me, is vital as part of the audit plan. Building that out, having the team run those continuous audits, having them look at that data and be able to get out there. A lot of it can be done against the financial controls, looking for those anomalies, looking at grant programs to see if something was outside of the compliance of the grant program. And those can be done, really, once you build the metrics in there, you just press a button and it runs the report for you. You go in, you look at the results of it. Now you have to also be sure that the data you have is, the core data is correct, but that's all part of the audit planning and everything. And then you can go and say, this grant or this program, it's real time. It's not when it's done and you have to look back and do a look back and say, what could we have done different? If it's starting to go off course, you might be able to bring it back. So those audits would be, and those hours are crucial to the internal audit function. And I think they bring value to the overall organization. The other thing I said is the reports. I felt like the reports didn't allow for accountability to anybody. It didn't really, now it was the one having to do with the financial, one of the financial programs I looked at. I still think that there could have been some recommendations, and the recommendations that I saw in there, I don't know what the impact and the likelihood was to those. So, you had 2 individuals who may have spent, they posted something to a program that they shouldn't have been. If I posted something to the program and it was $1 million transaction they posted to it, the impact to the organization is high. But if somebody posted $200 to the program, the impact is low, but those small transactions, the likelihood could be high that people don't do that. So then you look at the root causes. Is the policy adequate? Are the procedures adequate? Is somebody there's no quality control over these programs, et cetera. And then you can make that and say, this is why this is failing. And then you can target your findings. That was the other thing. When I read through them, I felt like it said that, we'll fix it, or we'll look at it, or we'll take a look at it on an annual basis. But really what you need is, especially if you've risk rated those findings, and that's very important because that then tells the organization, this is a risk. If it's rated high or medium, there's a risk. And there could be the likelihood that there's a loss to the organization based on these risks. So you put more urgency to those than a low-rated issue that you might be able to say is, we're willing to accept the risk now. But those medium and highs, you don't want to accept those risks for. So I thought maybe there could be some improvement on those to give you all more information. And then again, issues management. What kind of savings do we have in some of the audits that we do? One of the things that I thought about was the fact that the interim was able to find some pricing reductions with Grant Thornton. But if you are really wanting to see some financial reductions, by mapping those financial controls to your auditable entities and working with Grant Thornton to say, what would you like us to test this year? And then they can rely on your work. There's where your savings comes into play. And again, as I spoke about, you may spend, I'll throw this number out, $75,000 for an automated work paper package. But if I'm able to bring down your audit fees by $125,000 because now they can rely on my work, it's money well spent. And a cost analysis would be very important from my perspective of why I need to do what I do. And coming to the committee and saying, this is what I need to do, and this is the reason why. And one of the nice things about coming from financial services, a very highly regulated organization, is that, those audits to us, they're very structured, very rigid. The regulators look at them. We do them on a regular basis. But there's a lot of best practices we can bring into the organizations if it's outside of what banking is, because we are so highly regulated. And, higher education's highly regulated. You have Title IV, you have NCAA regulations. And one thing I wasn't able to find, but maybe you can guide me on this, was now like at UNLV, I know that there's an internal audit staff there, at least from what I read. Some of the smaller organizations probably don't have that, but you need to know what their audit plan is, and does it align to what you need? And are there risks in that organization? Have they identified the appropriate risks so they're doing the appropriate testing? Other than that, I was, I think that the reporting to you all as the Board of Regents and the committee could probably be much more strategic in nature to allow you guys to make decisions. I always feel like, you don't want to get down into the weeds. All of you sit on multiple committees. How much time do you have? If I'm giving you executive summaries and I'm giving you data in forms of charts and graphs with that explanation, you can look at things and say, Ms. Hawk or Kim, whichever you want to call me, just don't call me Kimberly because then I'll be all sweating and everything. But you can say to me is, we want to talk to you about this. And in addition, when I'm working with the chairman of the audit committee, I can say, what do you want me to talk about this month? This is what I think we should be doing, but do you have something on the agenda? And then the other thing I didn't notice was, do you all have executive sessions with either management or the chief audit executive that's off the record, or is because public universities, everything has to be on the record? Okay, then I won't talk about executive session, because in audit committees, in my organizations I've been at, you can take those offline and have those discussions. So thank you for letting me know that, so I'll never say, I need to have an executive session off the record, so I'll never ask that question. But in closing, look like I have about 9 minutes, and if you see, I'm Italian, so I talk a lot with my hands. But I think that after hearing the questions you asked, knowing my background, I feel I can bring a completely different perspective to the audit department of the Nevada State Higher Education System. Pardon me? Okay, excuse me. The Nevada. I'll go long. That's the Jersey, and you can go Nevada, like that thing. But I think I can bring a different perspective to the organization, and I looked forward to the challenge of being able to bring that to you all and allowing you guys to mature as an audit function in the organization, and allowing the audit committee to mature. Giving you guys, what are the risks out there? The IIA comes out with their risk profile every year. And the risks are cybersecurity, business continuity, third-party risk management. That audit there alone is a huge audit that would have to be done, but the savings to the organization would be incredible. Because you're looking at vendors who, are they doing the work that they're doing? Is the contracts being done appropriately? That's an audit that I didn't see on here that I think would be valuable to the organization. And it's one of the risks that the IIA and in North America look at. So I think I bring a different perspective, but I bring that industry experience into it. And I don't look at it as I want to change you all to banking. I want to bring those best practices into the current organization and be able to grow it. So thank you. I appreciate the time today. If you have any additional questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them in the short time period. Or if I said something, you go, oh, why did she say that? I got to get some, clarification. But I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And rather than go ahead with some follow-up questions, we're just providing equity from our previous candidate to yourself. And we're going to go ahead and stop the interview from here. We want to express our appreciation for making your way out from the Hoosier State out to Nevada. So we do appreciate it.
Yeah, I did not get to see the last 3 days of the Fall Festival in Evansville. And in Evansville, my friends call me the queen of useless information. So the Fall Festival in Evansville is the second largest street fair in the United States. Do you know what the first largest street fair is? Mardi Gras. So a small little town like Evansville has the second largest street fair. There are 200 food vendors at this place. I only got to see 4 or 5 of them, so I got to miss that, but I'm glad I got to meet you all, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Before
Everybody
we
have
move
a
on
great
to,
afternoon.
thank you. Before we move on to agenda item number 5, I'm going to divert the attention over to Chief Human Resource Officer Eric Gilliland.
All right. Sorry, I was just letting the candidate leave the room. So thank you, Chair and Eric Gilliland, for the record. Just to let the committee know, our third candidate, Mindy Tanner, did email us late last night or last night to let us know that she was going to be withdrawing. She indicated that it's nothing that we've done. She has a personal situation that did not allow her to make the interview today, but she did thank us for considering her for this role. So I did want to let the committee know that. So that leaves us with the 2 candidates that we interviewed today.
Thank you, Mr. Gilliland. Because we expeditiously moved through those 2 candidates and we're ahead of time, I'm going to go ahead and transition over to question number 5. Agenda item number 5, which is the discussion and recommendation of the final candidate for consideration from the board by the Board of Regents. So today the committee will discuss and assess the candidates for Chief Internal Auditor and may take action to recommend the final candidate for consideration and possible appointment by the Board of Regents at our upcoming meeting held 1 week from today on October 18th. This agenda item, I'd like to really focus on the level of expertise demonstrated and the experience in the competency areas. Those competency areas, once again, professionalism, performance, environment, leadership, and communication. Regent Breger.
I guess more of a, Susan Breger for the record, more of a statement. Having 2 candidates, very different presentations, without the third, it makes it, I feel like a little bit challenging to, I like when there's more. Because how do you determine whoever one that is there, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. You don't have any, to judge the both of them is difficult, I think. That's just a thought. I wish the third one had been able to come, or there had been 4. Then if one dropped out, there would be 3, just to give you a perspective. So just a comment. Thank you.
Joe.
Regent Del Carlo.
Thank you, Chair Scott. I feel the same way that Regent Breger does. in my 8 years on this, the only time we had 2 candidates in a search we did, it didn't end well. And was there any consideration, I know this person dropped out last night, was there any consideration to bringing back, you had 12 candidates, to bringing out candidate number 4 and then just postpone the search, or was it too late, or how was the decision made just to bring us 2?
Mr. Gilliland, if you can touch upon the other candidate, please.
Yeah, I can Eric Gillen for the record. I can definitely touch on that. And then Chair, I don't know if you or Vice Chancellor Vatone would maybe want to weigh in on the availability of the pool of other candidates. Given the timing, we wanted to honor the time that the 2 other candidates had scheduled. We didn't want to interrupt that. But this is an opportunity. I don't know if it's an opportunity on this agenda or if we take this offline with the chair, but there are potential options, I think, available to us. But just given the timing, we weren't able to scramble to try to find another candidate. Given the circumstance that the candidate expressed to us was not something that we would have been able to, let's say, shift them to a virtual interview at this point in time. So.
And I can also follow up on that. During the week of September 23rd, when Human Resources did notify the 4 candidates selected for interview in the committee, we had 1 candidate withdraw their name about 7 days ago, primarily due to other commitments in the Northeast.
So was that the person ranked 4th, would you say, or within that group of 4?
Correct.
Okay, just making sure I understood that right.
So we initially did invite 4 candidates for interview, and out of the 4 candidates, we had obviously 1 from this morning due to an emergency situation, and the other candidate withdrew their name just a few days ago also.
Okay, thank you for that.
So we did initially have 4 candidates. Wow. Regent Boylan, I see your hand.
Thank you, sir. This is the first time I'm missing the legal people. What do we do? Can we do this again or something, or wait for more people? How does that work? Does someone know?
Mr. Boylan, I'm gonna.
Yeah, Regent Boylan, Chris Nielsen for the record and Chair.
Oh, there he is.
I believe
All right.
I'm here.
Awesome. Nice seeing you.
Yeah, just very good question, Regent Boylan. So I believe we're on agenda item 5 right now, which really gives you some options. Option 1 would be to make a recommendation of the candidates to the full board. The meeting scheduled for next Friday. Another option would be, if you see the second paragraph of the agenda item number 5, I'll just read it verbatim. It says, if no recommendation is made, the committee may discuss next steps, including but not limited to directing staff to continue the search. So based on that, the committee would have the option to direct staff to do this again with more candidates, would have the option to make a recommendation. In other words, you have some flexibility.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, I was missing you guys, really. I mean it. Love you, brother.
So with that clarification by Mr. Nielsen, I'm going to put this back out there. So the committee will discuss and assess the 2 candidates that presented to us today, and potentially make a recommendation for a final candidate for consideration and possible appointment by the Board of Regents for next week. So with that stated, would anyone like to initiate the conversation or discussion between the 2 candidates? Regent Del Carlo?
Let's leave it on. We've never discussed stuff like this. I mean, I would look, one of the things I always look at is longevity in a job. And I have concerns. Kim seemed very well qualified, of course, but I was concerned a little bit about the amount of jobs, 4 different jobs from August 16th to present. And she's only been in her present job since January. And there was a gap of time from, she left her one job August of 23 and then didn't start again until January 24. So I just had kind of a red flag there. Was she let go? Was she whatever? I mean, we don't know this information. And I don't know, I'm just feeling a little uncomfortable there. Although she certainly had a breadth and depth of knowledge, it seemed, in banking. And I'm very familiar with the USAA organization. My husband and I have been members since 1973. I've always known that to be a top employer, and a very small amount of time there, November 20th or 2020 to December 21, which is only 13 months, and you left for another job, and not just left for jobs, but moved from city to city to city, 4 different cities too. I mean, to me, I'm seeing some red flags there. I just can't help it. Thank you.
Regent Carvalho.
Thank you, Chair Scotta. I just have some other questions about where we could go with this search. So if we feel that this process wasn't as complete as we had originally hoped for, and I guess I'm really directing this to you, Mr. Gilliland, would you advise that we would open it again and have these same 2 candidates who came forward interview again, or would we just ask some of the others who had applied to come forward? How would this look if we decided today that we didn't want to choose a candidate to recommend to the full board?
Sure, thank you for that question, Eric Gillen, for the record. I want to put out there, I think, just up front and recognizing the concern, and I have those same concerns when we have few candidates to choose from. I will point out that is kind of the sign of the times right now for recruitment across the board, across industries. Our applicant pools have shrunk since the pandemic. Add on to that, this is a very specific position that the applicant pool is not as large as it would be, let's say, for a program coordinator, for example. So I want to put that out there so that way, as the committee, you can consider those aspects when you're considering the 2 candidates. I would strongly recommend that have a full detailed discussion about those candidates. We do have 2 qualified. As far as what we could do going forward, knowing what the chair, Mr. Vitone, and the other Chris, Paul, or the other Joe, sorry, Sunbury. There's too many names duplicated here. Knowing their evaluation of the candidates and that we brought 4 forward for the interviews and 2 of those dropped out, my assumption based on those candidates is that we would have to fail this search. The board would need, I believe, and I would look for legal's opinion, I think the board would have to authorize the committee to conduct another search, and the candidates could apply again, our 2 candidates we interviewed again. And so for the sake of their time and your time and the effort, I would recommend giving a full discussion to these 2 candidates. If you truly can't make a decision, and we don't want to force a decision. I never want to force somebody to make a hire just to fill a seat. That doesn't end well for us, and we've seen that. So we do have that option. It's not end of the road. We're not doing anything else, but we could re-engage and start this again. My assumption, based on my experiences, we'd probably get the same results from the applicant pool.
Yes, Regent Breger.
So good, Susan Breger for the record. I appreciate what you said, and I think that, and I've been in this position before, and then one of them dropped out, and we did go with the person that stayed because they were both qualified. I guess I'll start a discussion with Kim. Seemed very knowledgeable, very astute, answered things with great depth. And am one of those people when she said that, and my high school was a long time ago, but I did take bookkeeping 1, 2, 3, and 4 because there were not CPAs when I grew up. You just did bookkeeping ledgers, and I love numbers, so I can only go from that. It was fun. And I worked in the industry for a while. But it was hard to almost take, she was so exact, I guess, from what it appears, that it was hard to really see the person. And I'll say this about Lauren, she seemed very nervous today, which was unfortunate. I mean, overly nervous. And I just want to be, there's no sense in sitting here if I'm not honest. So we know how she works and what she does. So that's a good thing. We don't know. And I agree with Regent DiCarlo is that she has moved around a lot, and there might be more reasons to that. And we didn't get to ask that. I mean, I like when you can actually ask an additional question like that, but I'm, no disrespect to the chair, I didn't know if we could at the very end, like, why have you been to 4 positions? Because that might have helped us make a decision. So we didn't get to do that. Is there a way to follow up legally with her on something like that?
Regent Breaker.
sorry,
good
go ahead.
Just Chris Nielsen for the record. Yeah, legally, we did close 4, which was the actual interview process, agenda item number 4, and now we're just on, unfortunately, just on discussion and recommendation agenda items. So I don't believe there is a way to bring back and reopen agenda item number 4.
No, and
think-
if I could give, go ahead, finish. I just want to give clarity. Can Chair Arascata or you as legal ask that question? I'm trying to just give my thoughts. So I don't want to break any rules that you have, but it wasn't opening up number 4. It was just a discussion on how do we find out that information. Maybe I need to say it different to be able to get it done. But I have the same concern. Why 4 jobs? So I guess I'll just state that in regards to item number 5. That's my concern.
I can just, from an HR perspective, we generally would shy away from asking that. And the only reason is it could be that the individual just job hops. It could be that they have a spouse that's in the military and so they're moving, or they have any number of things that we want to make sure that we don't give the perception that we are discounting them for something that it would be otherwise protected.
Okay, I respect that.
I'm going to first go to
Sorry, this
Regent
is-
Cruz Crawford. Regent Cruz Crawford,
you.
and then followed by Regent Del Carlo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Chair Arascata. Regent Cruz Crawford, for the record, I have a couple of things. Number 1, Chair, excellent job with this. I wanted to follow up with Eric sorry. I should know your last name since I work with your wife. But I really want to, as we move into our next searches for our presidents and our chancellor, I would really like to use a rubric, because I think part of this confusing part is we see the delivery and we're looking at the delivery over the content. And so if we could really look at that based on our focuses of leadership, communication, professionalism, performance, environment, we could score those. And to me, longevity might be more important. So I might put forth someone else versus, it just makes it more black and white. It takes away the bias. And so I'd really like to explore that as we move on. So that would help me. But based on the information that I have, I want, to work with an auditor. And even though I'm out the door to the Senate, I still want to be a champion for NSHE and make sure that we get our funding. And part of that is the auditing process. And I want to be able to communicate with someone that I can understand how they're speaking and that they really have it in NSHE. I think Lauren has demonstrated that with her closing statements of the longevity piece. And for that, I would like to put forth Lauren Tripp as the recommendation for hire. I got to say the right word. Sorry, I don't have the piece in front of me. Let me grab it.
Regent Cruz Crawford,
I would
if I
like
may, prior to making that possible action, if we can touch upon Regent Del Carlo with a comment, and then if there's other comments, and then we can follow up with your motion.
Okay, perfect. And I'll grab the motion here in a minute. Sorry, I grabbed the wrong paper.
Thank you. Regent Del Carlo.
Thank you, Chair Arascotta. I would say too, if you get a brand new job in January this year, this is October, and you're already leaving and looking for other rings. I just see too many red flags. I'm just not feeling good about it. And we have to ask ourselves, Lauren's been in this job for a year, at least, I think it's been a year. I know we have her mentor that's in our room that's been on this committee helping. It was really sad that she was so nervous, but you have to think about it. I don't know her very well, but I think she's an introvert anyway. And she knows all of us. So it's even harder, I think, when you're an internal candidate because they know you and you know them. And at the end of the day, however this works out, she still is going to be in her job tomorrow and facing all of us. So that puts an extra level of stress. And she didn't have her best, I'd say, well, I don't call this a performance, but I just have to say she's very loyal. She loves her job. She's got her master. She's got the CIA. She's a CPA. And now she wants to get into data analytics. And, I've always been a firm believer of hiring from within, promoting our own, and then maybe bringing people in behind her that she can help mentor and develop. So I think we need to think of all those things too. And if she's been so loyal to us, where's our loyalty to her too? Because she's very qualified for this job. Thank you.
Chair.
Regent Boylan.
Thank you, sir. I kind of second what Regent Del Carlo just said, and I'll second the motion that she didn't make it yet. I'm always ahead of everybody else. Damn, I'm good. Okay, I agree with Regent Del Carlo. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Regent Boylan. As we have two candidates on our agenda or presented to us today, we're going to continue with agenda item number 5. And if we could, on agenda item number 5, we can truly focus on the level of expertise demonstrated from the experience and the competency areas. And I know Regent Cruz Crawford touched upon them as the demonstration of authority, credibility, ethical conduct, in addition to engagements, performance, internal auditor, competence required to identify and address the risks specific to the industry, and leadership and communication. Nerves do take a part. Nerves play a part. But that's where communication is essential. One of the essential competencies required to provide strategic direction, communicate effectively, maintain relationships, and manage internal audit and personal processes. So, Regent Boyle, I know you jumped ahead, but was there a motion on the table for agenda item number 5?
Did you want me, Chair Arascotta, did you want me to read the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is Regent Cruz Crawford for the record. I recommend Lauren Tripp as the final candidate for consideration and possible appointment by the Board of Regents, the meeting to be held on October 18th, 2024 at 9 a.m.
Thank you, Regent Cruz Crawford. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I second it, but I don't know about 9 a.m. Could we be 9:05? What was that? Yes, sir, I second it.
Seconded by Regent Boylan. If we could have all in favor of the motion, I'd signify by saying aye or yay.
Chair Scott, I have a
Hold on a
question.
second.
Since there's 6
Yes,
of us on this committee, what happens in the likely, I don't know if it's going to happen, but if we have a tie, then what? I mean, because normally, we normally have odd numbers on committees, ad hoc.
Yeah, if you have a tie, the motion, this is Chris Nielsen for the record. If there's a tie, the motion fails.
Okay, thank you.
So if we can identify, Chief Staff Nikolajewski, if we can do a roll call vote, please, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, may I ask that your committee secretary, Ms. Palmer, do that roll call vote, please?
Oh,
Thank you.
my
What you
apologies,
dare.
Ms. Palmer,
I liked you
please.
on the committee, I didn't know. I don't
So
think,
this is for the motion and seconded by Regent Boylan?
Chair Arascata,
No.
Regent Boylan,
Aye.
Regent Breaker,
aye.
Regent Carvalho,
Aye.
Regent Cruz Crawford,
Aye.
Regent Del Carlo.
Aye.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer. So as the committee just discussed, the candidate that will be recommended as the final candidate for consideration for an appointment by the Board of Regents at the upcoming meeting held 1 week from today at 0900. I'd like to express my appreciation to both candidates, both thoroughly researched and wonderful presentations. It was done professionally, ethically, and want to express not just my appreciation, but from the entire Audit Compliance Title IX Committee. Thank you. That was extremely well done and extremely professional. We're going to move over to agenda item number 6 with new business. Is there new business on the table? There is not. Bear with me. Let me get my.
I do have new business. I don't know if this is for this committee, but I would like to have our internal auditor, Lauren, look into that program she was talking about. And I mean, maybe it is time to, I know there's no resources, okay? I get that. But, you know, maybe there is resources to save people too, and we have a very small audit department, so maybe what she was suggesting would be helpful to us and maybe be more efficient. So I would like to see the audit committee look into some efficiencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Definitely documented there. Excellent. Appreciate it. So, second public comment. I asked the public comment for the meeting sites first. Is there any public comment at GBC? None heard. There is not public comment here in the Reno office. Is there a public comment at the systems office in Las Vegas?
I don't believe there's any public comment here.
Thank you. SCS, is there any public comment on the telephone? Thank you much. This meeting is adjourned at 12:17.